financial disclosure form that was just released today responded in detail to reports that he had failed to disclose luxury trips, flights on a private jet, and a real estate transaction with a Texas billionaire. And in an unusual move, Justice Thomas included a statement defending his travel with billionaire Harlan Crow, who has donated to a myriad of conservative causes. Joseph Biggs, a one-time lieutenant in the Proud Boys, was sentenced today to a 17-year sentence in prison. Now, this is after his conviction on charges of seditious conspiracy for plotting with a gang of pro-Trump followers to attack the Capitol and disrupt the peaceful transfer of presidential power on January 6th. Biggs' sentence was one of the stiffest penalties issued so far in more than 1,100 criminal cases stemming from the Capitol attack, and among only a handful to have been legally labeled an act of terrorism. Former President Donald Trump pled not guilty today and waived his arraignment in the Georgia criminal case charging him and 18 of his allies with interfering in the 2020 election. His plea came as Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, a fellow Republican, dismissed demands from the former president and some of his supporters to start impeachment proceedings against Fulton County District Attorney Fani T. Willis for her prosecution of Donald Trump and 18 of his co-defendants. Senator Mitch McConnell's second alarming medical episode before television cameras yesterday has renewed scrutiny on his health, as well as speculation about possible replacements for the longtime leader should he be forced to step aside. Now, just today, there's news that McConnell has received a note, I should say, from his doctor indicating that he has been cleared to return to work. This hasn't stopped Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, however, a Republican from Georgia, from saying that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is, quote, not fit for office, quote. Now, this is after he had his episode, but before the letter was released regarding his ability to return to work. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene, severe aging health issues and or mental health incompetence in our nation's leaders must be addressed. Now, she wrote this on a social media post on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. She went on to say that Biden, McConnell, Feinstein, and even Fetterman are examples of people who are not fit. She suggests the possibility of invoking the 25th Amendment, which deals with presidential succession and disability, as a way to unseat these leaders that she basically says are too old to serve. Republican rivals keep criticizing Vivek Ramaswamy after the fiery Republican debate. Now, after months of campaigning that rarely saw candidates call out one another on the trail, the 38-year-old biotech entrepreneur endured the most attacks at the GOP debate last week, and the attacks have not stopped. The onslaught comes as Ramaswamy moves forward in national polls, with some polls even having him in third place behind Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. The 538 average says that he has a polling number of 9.2%. Now, this is after a start from scratch campaign. And liberals are raising alarms, calling on Biden to sharpen his re-election pitch. Left-leaning Democrats have backed the president, but some are worried that his second-term agenda lacks ambition. These liberals are warning with greater urgency that President Biden must do more than just tout his record, and they warn about another Trump presidency to keep his party's left flank energized. If Biden fails to move to more clearly lay out an ambitious liberal agenda for his second term, these Democrats say the progressive voters he needs in 2024 may opt to stay at home. And top GOP donors and their allies are privately pushing Senator Tim Scott's team for more details about his bachelor status before deciding how much to support him in the presidential campaign. Now, these donors say they want to know more about his dating life and whether he has plans, I guess, to get married before the election. It's interesting to note that the U.S. has not elected a bachelor to the president since Grover Cleveland in 1884. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker went through the same thing when he was running for president in 2020, and it seems to not have been a problem for him. But some are speculating that maybe Democrats don't care much about folks' dating life like Republican donors. And finally, in the news today, researchers at the University of British Columbia, in collaboration with a Vancouver-based charity, are providing a lump sum of what the equivalent of $5,500 to 50 people experiencing homelessness in Vancouver. They found that the recipients spent fewer days homeless, increased their savings, and put more money toward essentials compared with a control group of 65 people who received no cash transfer. Now, this study adds to a growing body of evidence demonstrating the benefits of cash transfers to low-income populations. The researchers write, pointing to studies that reported positive impacts from cash transfers have been taking place in places like Kenya, Zambia, and in Pakistan. You are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by two brilliant contributors. Dr. Douglas Flowe is back with us. He's a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and he is the author of Uncontrollable Blackness. And also joining us today is Dr. Malikah Rahim. She is a scholar and historian of U.S. and African American history. And in hour two, that's the hour where we go deep and we dig behind the headlines on some of the biggest stories that are capturing people's attention and have people talking. Now, some of these stories make big headlines, others just have big impact. Well, today, the big headline story that we are following is the effort by Republican legislators, including those who are running for president, those Republicans who are running for president, to distort and in some cases eviscerate Black history. Not only as they campaign, but in school districts, in places, even in private businesses, there is a methodical and very concerted effort on the part of Republicans to eliminate the study of Black history, the analysis of Black history, and some are using it even as a wedge issue to gain votes on the campaign trail. I'm going to talk to two of the nation's leading voices on issues of race about how effective are these efforts and what should we be doing, all of us should be doing to combat these efforts to distort Black history. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. This was a really good feel-good story, and I don't know if you saw it, but it made me smile when I saw that Oprah Winfrey and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, they've teamed up, and they've teamed up to help people whose lives have been shattered by the wildfires in Maui. Now, the Maui wildfire broke out earlier this month and has since become the deadliest wildfire in modern American history. Currently, there are over 115 people that have been identified as have lost their lives as a result of these deadly fires. The duo, Oprah and The Rock, have launched a fund called the People's Fund of Maui. And in this fund, people can make direct deposits. You can send money, you can donate to this fund, and the money that is donated will go directly to the people whose lives have been affected by these fires. Now, Winfrey and Johnson kicked off this campaign and the launch of the People's Fund of Maui by themselves, donating $10 million. Got to give it up for Oprah and The Rock coming together and using their tremendous platform as well as their enormous resources to help those in need. How this fund is going to work is that anyone who is over the age of 18 or older, obviously, and you live in the affected area, and if you were displaced by the wildfires in Maui, you can receive, get this, $1,200 cash each month to help you get back on your feet. And all of the proceeds, all of the money that will be donated to this fund will go directly to those individuals who have been impacted. We know that people have been sending clothing and household goods and other kinds of goods, including food, to Maui. But The Rock and Oprah want to do something more. They want to go beyond those tangible items. They want to give people money that can help them get back on their feet. And according to The Rock and Oprah, this fund is going to go on as long as people choose to donate to it. They say that the goal is to be able to give people money regularly for at least the next 6 months. And what's so important about this fund and the effort by The Rock and Oprah is they're saying, look, we want to give people money so they can make decisions themselves about how to start to put their lives back together. It's kind of like the story about Vancouver and giving people who are homeless, giving them direct payments rather than giving them a blanket or giving them some clothing. The Rock and Oprah, like that study, shows that when people get money in their hands, people who have been impacted either by fires or who've lost their jobs and or who are homeless, that when they get that money, they can then have agency over their own lives. They can make decisions over their own lives, and they can start to regain the lives as they knew them before the tragedy much faster and in a way that is authentic to them. So again, give it up for Oprah and for The Rock for doing this, for stepping up and doing something really creative that is going to help the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have been displaced as a result of these wildfires. And that means Oprah and The Rock shouldn't be the only ones donating to this fund. There's an opportunity. You can go online and find this fund and figure out how you can make a donation. And I just feel really confident that if Oprah is involved in it and if The Rock is involved in it, this is legit. And this is going to help a lot of people. So again, if you're looking for ways that you can be a part of the solution and you can help families in Hawaii who have been impacted by these fires, find the People's Fund of Maui and make a donation and help a person who's been displaced get their lives back on track. Again, bravo to Oprah and bravo to The Rock. When we come forward, more of today's trending news with my expert contributors right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. And KBLA
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
We are back, and you are listening to Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. And in this hour, we are tracking today's trending and breaking news. And I have two brilliant contributors here with me to help us make sense of all of this news. And it has been a very, very busy news day. Dr. Douglas Flowe, a professor at Washington University in St. Louis and author of Uncontrollable Blackness, is here. And Dr. Malikah Rahim, a scholar and historian of U.S. and African-American history at Appalachian State, is also joining me in this hour. I want to start with you, Dr. Flowe. Did you see the clip from Mitch McConnell yesterday when he was trying to give that response? I think he was in his home state talking before a group, and a question was asked. And he had that moment where he paused and he couldn't really respond. We now know that he has been cleared by his doctors. Apparently, his physician says he's okay and can return to work. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, even before we got news about him being cleared by his doctor, comes out and raises some issues. And because it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, you're always a little suspect of it. But she says he's not fit for office. She goes on to say that Biden, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, and Senator Fetterman, who's just elected in Pennsylvania, all of them, she says, are examples of people who are not fit. So let's start with what you saw with respect to Mitch McConnell and how did it impact you? And then this concept that the list of names I just read, that none of these people are fit to serve.
Yeah, well, I didn't watch the video, but I mean, I know that he had a medical event during a conference, and it's not the first time that it's happened. It's always disturbing when you see anyone going through something like that, and it's definitely disturbing. The idea that we have to have a certain amount of confidence in political, leaders. In order for them to be able to function correctly. I'm thinking, it's worth kind of paying attention to the conversation around McConnell and whether or not he steps down and when he steps down, if only to compare it to the conversation that swirled around Dianne Feinstein in the spring. McConnell is similarly vowing to stick around, even though he's clearly having some serious health issues. There's a discussion about replacement for McConnell, but he has just recently, as you said, been cleared by the Capitol physician to continue his work schedule. And there doesn't seem to be the same chorus of voices criticizing him for not stepping down as we saw for Dianne Feinstein. I'm a history professor. Professors are known to remain in the profession long after the normal years of retirement. I applaud the idea of someone remaining active, finding purpose in their work and sticking to it. Politics are not about the work, not only about the work, but they're also about, as I said, public confidence. And I think that complicates this issue of when someone should step down, particularly when they're having serious health issues. Just to really quickly redress what you said about Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's hard to tell, as you were saying, whether or not she's being sincere, but I imagine that this comment could also be it could be coming from a place of wanting to justify and reinforce a lot of the comments that people are making about Joe Biden, right? I mean, she says, what does she say? We have to address severe aging among politicians, that this must be addressed. She's using this issue with Mitch McConnell to make herself seem like she's being really sincere, but at the same time, very clearly telegraphing this comment against Joe Biden.
Yeah, and I say that about Marjorie Taylor Greene, first of all, because she references the 25th Amendment, which has absolutely positively nothing to do with Mitch McConnell, Feinstein, Fetterman, McConnell. That's the amendment which allows there to be, some removal of a president in the event that he or she becomes disabled or unable to serve. So, I don't know, woman, read the Constitution, but anyhow, she just, this notion that John Fetterman, who had a mental health condition, depression, which he spoke very, honestly and openly about, was very transparent about, got medical help. Is it fair to put him in the category with someone like Mitch McConnell that might be having many strokes? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not trying to diagnose what happened to him, but someone that has a bout of depression, Professor Rahim, and goes into the hospital for it, should they be in the same category as 80-year-old plus legislators and elected officials?
Yeah, people suffering from mental health issues, right? Who are going to get the services that are available to them, who are utilizing the resources that are at their disposal, and actually seeking the help that's needed. And as long as they're competent mentally, physically, and emotionally, right, that we're all concerned about to maintain their positions, then that's where they stand. As far as McConnell, regardless of anyone's political party lines or where you may stand, anytime we see someone going through what we see McConnell going through, we all need to take a pause, because we all have grandparents and parents who are aging and getting older. But there's seriously something going on that is allowing us to want to question what's going on with McConnell and his leadership going forward, and if he's going to maintain his position. It's something, but we definitely should separate this physical episode that we're seeing McConnell go through from the mental health issues that we're seeing others address.
And Nikki Haley, Professor Ford, at one point suggested, stated very clearly that she believes that when you get to a certain age, I think it was 75, that you should take some kind of, cognitive test to see if you still have your, cognitive abilities. If you have dementia, or if you have some other kind of condition that might impact your reasoning, your memory, your ability to, continue to serve in office. What do you think about that? Do you think there should be some kind of mandatory testing for elected officials? And if so, at what age?
Yeah, I think she said that during the campaign, and I think it was Mike Pence who said, "Oh, well, maybe we should start that a whole lot earlier." I think it's a slippery slope. I don't like using that phrase because it's too easy, but it is a slippery slope. I mean, then what goes on the exam? What constitutes someone having competence for office? What constitutes someone having mental problems that make it so they can't finish, they can't do their job? I think it's also, it's anytime someone is clearly incompetent in some way or another, whether it's about a mental issue or a physical issue or about their age, it's always a problem. And so I don't know if if it makes sense to kind of create some sort of arbitrary criteria and some sort of testing system in order to do that. I think that would just end up going in the wrong direction. It would end up getting politicized just like everything else does.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that magical age would be. Like you said, what would even be on the test? Some people, would say anytime anyone engages in any kind of erratic behavior, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, should they be tested? So that's probably a slippery slope. Yeah. Obviously we have a Senate that is aging. And I looked at some of the names that were being recommended as replacement for McConnell, and most of them were over 70 years old. And I'm not an ageist, so I don't believe that people should be forced out of a job just because they reach some numeric age. It's all about your competency and your ability to serve, because we know that there are people in their 80s and 90s who are very sharp and very capable. They're doctors and, scientists and people performing really serious job. So I don't know. Obviously, Mitch McConnell, if he has something going on that's going to interrupt or disrupt his ability to serve, it's going to continue. And this doctor examining him today saying he's fit for office is not clearing up whatever this underlying issue is. So I think it'll reveal itself in plenty of time. Today, we'll talk about this before we take some news and traffic. Donald Trump, former president, had to plead not guilty today in that Georgia RICO case, and he's waived his arraignment. But this is a historic day, Professor Rahim, because we have our former president that is at the top of the ticket for the next presidential election having to plead not guilty. Not something that you would expect. This is something unprecedented, that we use that word a lot as it relates to Donald Trump. But this truly is unprecedented. What did you make of what happened today in that Fulton County court? He wasn't there, so he didn't have to make a physical appearance. And I suspect he's going to try his best to avoid making appearances until he absolutely has to. But still, that's the news today, is that our former president had to plead not guilty.
Yeah, on one hand, as the historian, it's something we'll walk into class to talk about. And how do we understand the presidency and the office of the presidency as we move forward with United States history? How do we understand Donald Trump in all of this that is taking place? But then again, when you think about him pleading not guilty, it's just to continue to occupy our attention, to occupy the space, and to continue the big lie. I mean, we all heard the evidence that was shared with us from the recordings that was leaked. There's evidence against him. And for many, I guess, it's just his way of prolonging and just, dragging us through the mud with him, with all of these indictments and these issues that we're dealing with. It's just getting to the point where it's a little ridiculous, especially with the elections that are approaching, and the fact that we might have a candidate who might become president who is literally still trying to defend himself in Georgia courts.
Yes, you're right. We may go to the polls next year having to decide on voting for someone who is under indictment, who may be in the midst of not one trial, but multiple criminal trials. That is the reality where we find ourselves today. When we come forward, we're going to talk about this Proud Boy and the sentence that he received, and this pressure by Republicans to impeach Fani Willis, and what the governor of Georgia had to say and why. All of that and more when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Your bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 15,
I am back, and we are tracking today's trending news with my expert contributors, Dr. Douglas Flowe. He's a professor at Washington University in St. Louis and author of Uncontrollable Blackness, and Dr. Malikah Rahim is here. She's a historian of U.S. and African American history at Appalachian State. And in hour two, we're going to be talking about the headlines and the big story. Why are so many Republicans distorting and in some cases trying to eviscerate African American history, not just from schools, but even in stump speeches and in campaign literature? There just seems to be an intense and pretty concerted effort on the part of Republicans to tell a different story about America and its history. Going to have two of the nation's leading experts on race join me in hour two. But Dr. Flowe, you are a historian, and I got a lot I still want to get to in this hour, but we got to talk about Clarence Thomas and his disclosure forum today. The retrips on a private jet, Harlan Crow, billionaire that has been bankrolling him, purchased a home for his mother, paid for education for a nephew, I guess, that he adopted or, almost adopted or, took into his home. Let's put it like that. And this report, even though he acknowledges the three trips, still doesn't seem to be comprehensive, still doesn't seem to cover every gift or gratuity that he has received. And then there's this explanation for one of the trips that he was told to avoid commercial air flights because of the leak of the Dobbs decision. But help us understand how the Supreme Court is viewed today versus how the court has been viewed historically. Is this, this lack of confidence because you have justices on private jets with billionaires who have cases before them? Is this lack of confidence that we have today, is this new, or is this something that has been a part of this court's history?
It's new. I mean, and what we're seeing is this continuation of the erosion of trust and respect and meaning behind all types of government agencies, government rulings, people in politics, and definitely the Supreme Court. We have justices like Thomas taking money from conservative billionaires. We have a Supreme Court that lacks a clear code of ethics about whether receiving funding, gifts, and assistance from interested parties is okay, right? We're talking about very specific, impactful, pivotal political roles that Supreme Court justices play, and they don't have any rules about whether or not you're able to take money from someone who might have some interest in something you can do. There should be no wiggle room for undue influence. There should be no wishy-washy understanding about gifts and funding. If you work at a fast food restaurant, the first thing you get when you do orientation is a book of rules about the way that you engage with the business, with their assets, and with their customers. So there should be something like that, just as clear and just as precise for the Supreme Court. Why should the Supreme Court justices not have explicit mathematical rules about receiving money from Texas billionaires? Also, why does Clarence Thomas, after being a justice for decades, need someone else to pay for his mother's home and his nephew's private school? I mean, maybe that's an aside. That's personal, maybe. But so he described this as personal hospitality from a friend, and he's tried to kind of explain it away in that way. But when you have such a high position, when you have such an important position, I don't know if there really should be such a thing as personal hospitality from a friend that amounts to that kind of money, especially if that friend has some interest in the kind of politics that you might be able to influence.
Yeah, and I think what's so troubling about this is, in addition to what you said, no code of ethics, resisting any efforts by the Senate to impose even oversight, investigate, or rules of ethics, and this notion of self-governance. Yeah. So they get to decide when or if they recuse themselves. So Harlan Crow can have business before this court, which he has had an interest in lots of cases before the court. And there's no one there to tell Clarence Thomas, okay, you flew on his private jet 3 times last year, so you're off this case. You're not going to decide this case. That doesn't exist. So he can decide cases and tell us, oh, I'm not influenced by this. But by definition, Harlan Crow, I just don't believe, picked Thomas Clarence to be his BFF all of a sudden. I mean, this was a very purposeful hookup, connection, introduction, and relationship that they have. And it really, as you said, has eroded the trust that the public has, the U.S. public has, in the court at a time when we need the Supreme Court to be that body, because we have seen the erosion of trust in our legislative body. We have so much infighting, so much partisan infighting that it's hard to have any faith in any branch of our government. And that brings me, Professor Rahim, to this story about Governor Brian Kemp. Thank God he resisted efforts. Republicans in his legislature, which is dominated by Republicans, want to impeach Fani Willis, not for any misdoings or improprieties, but simply because she had the confidence, the guts, the audacity, in their opinion, to do her job and to prosecute a former president that committed crimes in her state. So the people of Fulton County elected her to do the job of prosecuting criminals. And she said in one of her press conferences, she's prosecuted 1,100 criminal cases. This is her 11th RICO case. So you can't say that she's singling Donald Trump out for some kind of political prosecution, but yet Republicans want to impeach her. And Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, says no, the buck stops here. He's not going to meddle into that prosecution by Fani Willis. But imagine this is Ron DeSantis, who did remove an African-American district attorney in the state of Florida. Where would we be if a Republican governor fell to the pressure of Donald Trump, who's calling on the impeachment, and these other fellow Republicans?
Well, we can thank Governor for holding his ground, right? And to letting everyone know that the buck stops with him. But if the steps were to be taken, I mean, it just goes to speak to the ongoing erosion of the American democracy that we have, seen from Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis to, what is currently taking place in the state of Florida with, Republicans calling for her removal. This is just, could we just say this is America now? I mean, it's getting to the point where we're kind of seeing the same things and we're covering the same stories. And it's just ongoing with people trying to manipulate justice and people trying to stand on the right side of history. I mean, we're just historians, but there are things that have been put in place for some types of checks and balances. And we need to make sure those measures are maintained, not just in the Supreme Court and through, those three branches of power, but all the way down to our local and state governments, that people who were elected, who were put in place to do their jobs, have a right to do their jobs without any threat or harassment. And we need to see that take place. And if we don't see that take place, then we are not living in a fair and just society that we try to uphold as these freedoms of democracy.
And I'm glad you mentioned without fear of threat or intimidation, because a lot of these campaigns, they know at the onset that they're not going to be successful. Governor Kemp of Georgia resisted efforts by Donald Trump to overturn the election in Georgia in 2020. That's why Donald Trump has now been indicted in Georgia. Kemp wouldn't go along with him back then. So I think Republicans knew that Kemp was not going to allow for the impeachment of Fani Willis. But by even initiating these conversations, even by having these conversations, they are sending a message to other prosecutors throughout the country that if you dare prosecute one of ours, if you dare, go after a Republican that we deem important, then we will come for you. So we know the Fani Willises of the world. We know the Alvin Bragg, the Tish Jameses. These are very strong prosecutors who are standing up to the onslaught of intimidation tactics and harassment by Republicans. But there are lots of district attorneys in counties who might be afraid to move forward with the prosecution against some powerful elected Republican in their state, in their county, for fear of removal, for fear of the kind of harassment that we see Fani Willis has to undergo. So these tactics are having an impact, even though Fani Willis is not likely to be removed. this is impacting other district attorneys who may be making decisions about who to prosecute. And that should not be anything. That should not be in their calculus. Shouldn't be whether you're Republican or Democrat. The question should be, did you commit a crime? Is there probable cause to bring charges against you? And Fonnie Willis is standing on that. When we come forward, we're going to talk about these Democrats, progressives, saying Joe Biden better step it up or else he may lose to Donald Trump, and talk about this 17-year sentence that the founder of the Proud Boy, I guess he's the one-time lieutenant of the Proud Boys, received today. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Gifted and black. KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Get off the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up.
All right, Professor Flowe, progressive Dems are telling Biden in a very urgent tone that he needs to step it up. And they're saying it's not enough just to talk about your accomplishments in your first term. They say Biden needs to lay out a more ambitious liberal agenda for a second term, and that's the only way that progressives are going to come out and vote in 2024. What do you think about this?
I agree and disagree. I think it's always great to have an ambitious campaign. For instance, we still need a huge infrastructure project, that he should, he has talked about it, but he could talk about it even more. He could promote it more, make it more central to the agenda. I don't know if that's the thing that we need in order to get liberals out to vote, right? I think the stuff happening on the other side of the aisle that is, really going to push people forward. I'm sure his supporters would like to see a more ambitious agenda, but I don't know if that will make much of a difference in whether or not he wins the campaign. The economy, for instance, has been getting a whole lot better, but a lot of people don't think that he would be as good as Trump on the economy, right? So I think that what we're looking at is a situation where, facts are not always part of the campaign. It's not always the economy, stupid, right? Again, the campaign is getting better. It's not always about the economy. At this point, it really seems like the political fortunes of someone like Joe Biden or anyone who's running for president is really about how people feel, how people think, what brings people's attention the most. And in that way, he's at a deficit. He's dealing with some really serious challenges because of his age, because of the way people are thinking about his incumbency. And I think the real thing that needs to happen is really going to need to happen on the Republican side, right? I mean, how their campaign goes is really what's going to draw people out to vote against the Republicans and therefore for the Democrats.
Why do you think the age issue, you brought up his age, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are classmates. I mean, they're at the school at the same time. Mm-hmm. And, once you get past 12, people in your class or at the school with you at the same time, you're essentially the same age. So why does Biden's age come up so often as a negative, whereas Donald Trump, who's in his class at the school at the same time, a classmate, would be at the high school reunion, people don't harp on him as an elderly man who's running for president? Why do you think there's that difference?
I think one, it's because of just the optics, right? Trump doesn't walk around looking and showing his age as much as Joe Biden does. But then secondly, I think it's just because the Republicans have done a really good job of campaigning and talking about his age in a way that has stuck, right? I mean, it has kind of like cemented into the optics of his administration. They've done a really good job of that. But there are definitely some differences in the way that he appears. He's still coherent, he's still able to do the job. But I think it's also about optics. Just as I was saying, this is a very, very visual culture now. I mean, we would like to think that if he makes a very ambitious campaign, that's really going to do it. But I think that there's a really big optic problem. And maybe depending upon what happens on the Republican side, it might solve itself for us.
What do you think, Professor Rahim? Do you think if Biden lays out some ambitious agenda for the second term, that's going to galvanize and energize folks on the left?
No, I'm with Douglas, right? And I agree with many of the points that he made. There's the disconnect with Biden and pretty much a lot of his supporters, especially the young supporters, we're not seeing, many of the great strides that he initially promised have come through yet, right? And so for us to see another ambitious agenda when he hasn't completely fulfilled his initial goals would just be too ambitious for him at this particular point. That is where I stand on it. I think there's, again, a lot of work that Biden has that needs to be done based off of his original promises, again, with infrastructure. I mean, we're still looking to see major moves taken with student loans. Americans are suffering with that. The economy may be getting better, but bills are still there for many Americans.
So you think
that's
that
not going away.
Voters will hold Biden to account for what they believe he has not accomplished and will not vote, or will vote for the Republican?
I'm not saying they won't vote for Biden, but they're going to vote for him to uphold his original promises more than wanting to see him lay out a new agenda with new promises. And I think that is where many Americans will stand. And again, it's up to the Republicans, right, to give the Democrats a major win. We need to see, and again, continue to see the Republicans make the moves that they're making. And that's going to push people to vote for Biden and for him to get some of those votes that get some of the votes from voters that may not be too sure about him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm also of the frame of mind that it's not a more ambitious agenda that's needed. I think Biden has done a tremendous job on infrastructure, getting the bipartisan bill passed. One of the reports coming out recently is that there are not enough workers in this country to even do some of the projects that cities and municipalities are trying to roll out, that they have hundreds of millions of dollars ready to spend, but cannot even find the skilled workforce that can handle some of the big infrastructure projects. The student loan, again, Biden can't be held accountable for student loans. That's the Supreme Court that prevented the student loan executive order that he signed from being implemented. And then he still has been able to waive some student loan debt. So I don't think there's a problem of not having an ambitious agenda. I just think we've got to do a much better job of reminding people of the alternative, because on the other side is either Donald Trump, a 4-time indicted former president, twice impeached, that you are voting for, or it's Ron DeSantis, who has literally tried to destroy every human right that we have in the state of Florida. So, and I guess those are the two top folks we're thinking about, or the 38-year-old tech entrepreneur who, every time he opens his mouth says something inconsistent in terms of what he said the former day. So he lies as much as Donald Trump. In fact, he models himself after Donald Trump. So I think that the Dems got to get out there and remind people, you may not love Biden, but boy, this is what you get if you don't vote for him. Real quickly, Professor Flowe, 17 years for this Proud Boy lieutenant who was responsible for plotting and leading the insurrection. You think that's enough time?
I think it's enough time. I think there's always questions. I write about prisons and sentencing, et cetera. And there's always a lot of questions about, one person gets a murder conviction and they get 30 years and another person gets 20. There's always some questions about that. I'm encouraged to see that there are people who, are actually paying some serious prices and really having to come to terms with what they did on that day, right? That organization, the Proud Boys, is now mostly inactive. Unfortunately, the sentiments behind the Capitol riot still exist. Not only do they still exist, they're continuing to expand. We're seeing some of them. Obviously, this is a little bit different from the Capitol riot, but it comes from some of the same places. We're still seeing those sentiments in places like what we saw in Jacksonville with this shooting and other violence. So there's a lot of anger that's not just going to go away. It's not going anywhere. And in some ways, a sentence like this, as happy as I am to see it, and I think that it does represent a type of justice, it also kind of creates a martyr out of him. And some of the other sentences that we're seeing that in some ways might continue to fuel the flames.
Yeah, definitely. I have mixed feelings about it. It is a substantial time. Federal prison, 17 years is nothing to sneeze at. The prosecutors were asking anywhere from 25 to 33 years for these Proud Boys who were convicted. But I think the sentences and the prosecution of 1,100 people that invaded our Capitol has definitely had a deterrent effect, because we're not seeing those crowds outside of these courthouses. Donald Trump has tried to summons crowds to show up, and folks are sitting it out. And I think they're looking at these sentences, or looking at the way people's lives have been disrupted because they went to the Capitol that day, and they're having second thoughts. And clearly our law enforcement agencies are not having it. And if you get out of line, step out of line in the way that we saw at the Capitol that day, you will be taken down, either shot, definitely arrested and prosecuted, and face really serious penalties. So I think it's a good day for our democracy when the Proud Boys lieutenant gets 17 years and others are expected to get similarly really harsh sentences. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Professor Flowe. Always a pleasure to see me.
Thank you very much.
See you, my St. Louis homeboy. I love having you on. You're the author of Uncontrollable Blackness. And thank you, Marjorie Rahim, a professor at Appalachian State, professor of U.S. and African American history. Thank you so much for joining us. When we come forward, more of Areva Martin in real time.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you